Okay, thank you everybody for being here with us. I don't know what happened, why we were kind of kicked out of the Zoom, but we're back up and running and everything is good. So thank you, Natalie, for being here with us and for hosting today. Do you have a few words to say before I get started?
I do, yeah. So for those who didn't join us last time or who don't know us, I'm with High Point Village, and we are a 501c3 nonprofit out here in Lubbock, Texas, and we serve individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We do that in a few ways. We do our main program is our enrichment program, which is our daily program throughout the year for adults ages 18 and over. And then we do have afternoon enrichment for like school age kiddos through adults. Anyone can join over the age of 8. And we have camps in the summer. That's also for people over the age of 8 years old. And then we do have therapies. We've got speech therapy, music therapy, and that's for all ages. And then social services, which is where I come in. I'm the social services director out here. And we have connection to resources, referrals, crisis intervention, mental health support, etc. And we do on our website, I do have a social services tab, and of course also all the information about our programs and our activities and stuff. But if you want more information about what we're talking about today or our future webinars or the one we did before, all those kinds of benefit information, go to www.highpointvillage.org. Go to the social services tab and click on that, and it's got all kinds of information, stuff you can print out, additional links for additional resources. And these webinars are all going to be linked on there as well, because sometimes this information needs to be rehashed over and over again to actually get a grasp of it. So thank you so much, Michelle, for partnering with us again, and I'll hand it back to you.
Well, thank you so much again, Natalie, for having us, and for everybody who has joined us. Thank you for being here. I'll go over the rules of the road a little bit. If you've not been to one of our webinars before, welcome. If you've been with us once or twice in the past, you might already know some of these things, but we plan on being here for about an hour. We cannot see you or hear you, so don't feel bad if you're eating or taking care of other things as you listen to us. So since we can't hear you or see you, you can put any questions or comments that you have into the chat box. I will be keeping an eye on that and get to as many questions as I can while I'm talking. If I ignore your question, please don't get angry with me. It just means that I probably have a slide coming up soon that's going to address that question. And also, I wanted to let you know that later on today, everyone who has registered for this webinar will receive the slides and a link to this webinar on our YouTube channel. You'll get that all in your email later on today. So I'll probably repeat that several times throughout. And the final thing before I get started is if you are listening on our podcast and you would like a copy of the slides, you can email us. The address is contact@cpgcares.net. cpgcares.net, contact@cpgcares.net if you would like a copy of the slides and you're listening on our podcast. So today we're going to go over kind of a high level overview of all of the government benefits that are available to you. At Consolidated Planning Group, we feel strongly about educating families and advocating for families like yours who have someone in the family who might have different abilities. Families come to us because we are a holistic special needs planning firm. We focus on families with special needs kiddos. We're located in Sugar Land, Texas, and we serve families all across the United States, mostly Texas. We have over 30 years of experience in insurance and financial services. We are part of the $1 Million Roundtable, which just, is an industry designation and means that we're trusted by a lot of people to take care of their finances. We are also members of the Special Needs Planning Academy, and we are national Social Security advisors. So the reason that we do this really is because the owner of our group, Allison Scaberg, has two kids that have some sort of a need or a disability that they're dealing with. And when she was going through all of this, she saw just how confusing and difficult figuring out all of these government benefits can be. So we decided to take our whole company in the direction of helping, specifically aiming to help families who have a special needs loved one. So families come to us for things like their protection plans, life insurance, income protection, things like that. Lifetime care plans, thinking about how much it's going to cost to take care of your loved one if they need like a residential community or care services throughout the rest of their lives. How much will that cost? Transition planning, what happens after high school? What's next? We help families with ABLE accounts. And of course, like I said, advocating and educating. There are many, over 263,000 financial advisors in the United States, according to the US Census Bureau. I think the most updated information was from 2021, 263,000 financial advisors, but fewer than 0.1% of those advisors focus on special needs planning. So you are definitely in the right place. You have found the right people to help you out, because we are one of that 0.1% of advisors who understand this stuff. So the first thing I want to talk to you about today, there are a lot of acronyms that the government uses, and some of them sound very familiar or sound very similar, but they stand for totally different things. And some of them sound very different, but they mean the same thing. So it can get quite confusing. And some of what we're going to talk about today is to help you understand what these all mean. So the first one I want to talk about is SSDI versus SSI. Okay, so SSDI is Social Security Disability Insurance. This money comes from the Disability Trust Fund, and it's an insurance that you earn by paying Social Security taxes on your wages when you work. And it pays benefits to disabled individuals who are unable to work, regardless of their income and their resources. The benefits for workers and for adults who have been disabled since childhood, as long as they meet the insured status requirements. Okay, so what this means is if your loved one who has a disability has been working and they have earned enough work credits to have Social Security, they might qualify for SSDI while they're still relatively young, basically as soon as they get all those credits, because they have a disability and they've paid into Social Security. Another way you could qualify for SSDI is because it can also be RSDI, can be called two different things, but this is when the parent has worked and has built up that Social Security record, and the parent becomes disabled or turns on their retirement benefits or passes away, then the child can draw from their record. And we'll talk about that a little bit. So that's how your child might be able to get SSDI, even if they've never worked. Now, SSI stands for Supplemental Security Income. And the payments for this come from the general tax revenues. It's not from Social Security or the Social Security trust funds. This is a needs-based public assistance program, and it doesn't require that you have any work history involved at all. So this money is for disabled individuals who are not able to work to build up their own work record, and they have to have limited income and assets. The benefits are for children and individuals and adults who are in financial need. So you have to be in financial need to be able to get SSI, and you have to have some sort of a disability. So what are we talking about? When you're over 18, there are certain qualifications that you have to meet for SSDI and SSDI. You have to have some sort of physical or mental impairment. This disability has to be expected to last at least 12 months or result in death. They take into consideration your age, your education, and past work activity. And you have to be unable to perform substantial work activity, because if you can hold a job, you can get paid, then you can kind of fend for yourself, they feel like. What does it mean that, you work? How much do you have to work? So the first line of this is what the rules were in 2022. So let's skip down to 2023. If you are making $1,470 a month, $1,470 a month, that is the limit. That's how much you can make per month and still get SSI or SSDI. If you're blind, you can earn a little bit more. But if you make more than $1,470 a month, you are going to be pretty much ineligible to get SSI or SSDI. So be careful with that. And if it's not like a full denial, then they might just bring down your benefits a little bit. And we're going to talk about that. You might not get the full amount of your SSI benefit if you're working. So starting in January 2023, the rate for an individual receiving SSI benefits went up to $914 a month. Last year it was, I think, $841. Now it's $914. If you are a married couple and both parties are disabled or have some sort of a disability, that amount is $1,371 a month, which, it makes me kind of angry that you get a decreased amount if you get married and you get paid more if you stay single. But that's just the way it is. We're dealing with the government. They didn't ask me when they came up with these rules what my opinion was, unfortunately. So that's the rule. You can get $914 a month if you're just single. If you're a married couple and both parties have a disability, $1,371 a month. There are other things that they look at when you're talking about qualifying for these. Not only do you have to have a low income and you have to have a disability, you can't hold a ton of assets. If you're single, you cannot have more than $2,000 in assets. You can have one house and one car. Those don't count against you. But then there's other rates too. So if you're a married couple, you can have $3,000 in assets. If it's a child with one parent, $4,000 in assets. And if you have a child and two parents, it's $5,000. And I think, sorry about that. So when it comes to SSDI or RSDI and Medicare, the rules are a little bit different. It's just based on your work record and the tax paid into Social Security. It's not based on how much you have in the bank or how much assets you have. So that's just a little bit different there. Okay. When you're thinking about, we've talked about how much you can earn, $1,370. We've talked about how much you can have in assets, and we talked about that you have a disability. So how do you know if they're going to consider that you have a disability? The Blue Book can help you. Stop. Sorry, my dog's being loud. The Blue Book will help you see if they're going to determine that you have a disability. You can look at the Blue Book link When your child turns 18, they turn to an adult. So this is the adult listings. Before age 18, you're probably not going to qualify for SSI because they're going to look at the parent's record, and the parent probably has more than $2,000 or $3,000. But once your child turns 18, they are legally an adult. So they're going to look at only your child's income and assets and disability. So by looking at the Blue Book, you can see what they're going to use to determine that your child has a disability. What do you need to prove? And it's good to understand this before you go into your application process to make sure that you have everything documented that you need. So this is the way it works. When your child turns 18, they should be able to get SSI. You want to schedule your appointment a few months in advance. Schedule your appointment a few months in advance, but schedule it for like as soon after they turn 18 as possible. Like the day after is fine if you can get in. You can apply at your local office, by phone, or online, but the easiest way, really, what we recommend and what the Social Security Administration recommends is that you apply online. If you go online early and start sending information in and start filling out the application, and they don't get to it until 2 months after your child's 18th birthday, it does save your place. It says, hey, I applied for this on time. It's your fault. So you will get back payment to the date that your child turns 18 or when you applied or whatever the situation is there. You want to have evidence that demonstrates that there is a disability and that the disability began before age 22. And that would be things like your doctor's name and address and phone numbers. You want to have a list of your children's diagnoses, what medications they're on, if any, and what those medications are for. They don't really care about the dosage or things like that, but what are they on? And if your child has done any work, they want to know who the employer was, what the earnings were, and then they're going to want to see bank statements to make sure that you don't have too much money in the bank. And you might want to even get in touch with your doctor or your child's primary care physician ahead of time and ask them, hey, we're getting ready to apply for these benefits, and they're going to ask for my child's medical record. Can I see what's in there so I can make sure that everything is correct and everything that needs to be in there is? And you can take a look at your child's record and just make sure that it's all written down and that there is proof of the disability before you even before you take the time to apply. So what happens? What should you expect after you apply? Well, the first thing that you need to know is that it can take up to 6 months and sometimes longer for the whole process to go through. The first thing that you're going to get might freak you out a little bit. The first thing that you're going to get is a denial for SSDI. I know it's crazy, but when you apply for SSI, you're automatically applying for both SSDI and SSI at the same time. If your child hasn't worked and they don't have a work history, they're not going to get SSDI. You're going to get a letter saying that they're denied. And you're going to be like, what? My kid is definitely eligible for SSI benefits. What's going on? That's what's going on. They're going to deny you for SSDI. And then a couple months later, you're probably going to get a letter saying that you do qualify for SSI. And that is going to worry you. And we understand, we hear that all the time. After your local office finalizes the application, they send it to Austin to the Disability Determination Services. And these are the people who are really going to look into your medical history, look at your bank statements, really examine everything and make sure that your child qualifies. They're determining that there truly is a disability. What's great is that they actually answer their phone. They're there to answer your questions. So you can call, a couple weeks, maybe a month or so after you send everything in and you have your application in, you can call these guys at the DDS and say, hey, do you have everything you need? Is there anything else that you're waiting on? Who is it that's taking care of my file? Has it been assigned yet or not? Are we still waiting on that? Do you have all the medical records? Did my doctor's office respond to you? And maybe you're going to have to call your doctor's office and let them know, hey, get on the ball. We need you to send those records over to the DDS or whatever. At least you can keep in the loop and know what's going on with your application.
And Michelle, I'll jump in really quick. And you were, I think, more specifically talking about the SSI application before. So if you're trying to get your loved one SSDI and they're eligible based upon someone's retirement or death or disability of a parent that's paid in, you won't get that automatic denial. That was more for if you're applying for SSI, you actually are applying for both, and you will very likely first get a denial to SSDI. If you're trying to get SSDI, hopefully you do not get that denial letter.
Exactly.
If you are applying for both, yes, that was correct.
Yes. So there are some disabilities that they refer to as presumptive, where there's a list that they keep called compassionate allowance. And basically what this is a list of presumptive disabilities. They say, if you have this, then we pretty much know you're going to qualify as having a disability. We're going to go ahead and approve it quickly without really worrying too much about proof. I mean, you do need to have proof still from your doctor, but it's not going to take as long if you have one of these. The Social Security office themselves can actually make the determination, or DDS can still make the decision. So what am I talking about here? I'm talking about things like Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, totally blind or deaf. If you have an amputation of a leg at the hip, just things like that. If you're confined to bed or you cannot be mobile without a wheelchair, a walker, or crutches because of a long-standing condition. These are things where if you call, they pretty much know you're going to be accepted to the program. So you really don't have to worry. You do still have to prove that you have these things, but it moves faster. Okay, so if you are working or your child is working and you apply for SSI, this is kind of how they look at, do you get the full amount while you're working or do you get a lesser amount? If you make over that $1,470, that's the limit. You're not going to get SSI benefits, or your child is not going to get SSI benefits if they're working and making more than $1,470 a month. If they're making under that, this is an example of how they figure out what the deduction is going to be. So, for example, if your child is making $1,200 a month gross, first they take off the first $85 automatically for a general exclusion and an earned income exclusion. So that leaves you with $1,115 gross monthly income. They divide that by 2. That's your countable income. So that number in this example is $557.50. Then they subtract that amount from the full amount you could get, $914 a month. So $914 minus your $557.50 leaves you with $356 that you should be able to get from SSI benefits. That's one example of how that deduction works when you're working, or your child who wants to draw benefits. So you can still get SSI benefits, but this is an example of how those would be reduced if you're working.
And it seems confusing, but they do it because they do want to encourage work if someone is able to work. So it seems like, what is all this for? It's because they do want you to be able to work if you can, but then they just, they don't take, it's not dollar for dollar if it's earned income.
Right. They want you to be able to work, and they understand that even if you're working, they can't say, oh, if you have a job, you don't get it, because some people are working and they're trying, but they physically are unable to work the same amount of hours as other people might. So they take that into consideration too. There's also the student earned income exclusion. And basically, without trying to sound like a CPA, because I am not a CPA, but if your child is regularly attending school, there is an exclusion where they don't count their earned income for purposes of figuring that SSI payment. So the maximum yearly exclusion for this part is $8,950, and this is if your child is regularly attending school. This is not the same as a neurotypical child's school schedule. They go 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, or whatever when they're in middle school, high school. Their guidelines, when they say regularly attending school, if it's a college or a university, 8 hours a week. It does not have to be a full load. If they're in grades 7 to 12, your child has to be in school at least 12 hours a week. If there's a training course or something like that to train for employment, again, 12 hours, or 15 hours a week if there's some kind of like shop practice or a practicum component to the classes, or a lab or something like that. Or if you're homeschooling, you have to be homeschooling grades 7 through 12, again, 12 hours a week. And you have to ask for them to apply this student earned income exclusion. They're not just going to do it automatically, unfortunately. So not enough people know about that. So if your child is attending school and working, ask about the student earned income exclusion. So when it comes to working, the Red Book, the Social Security Red Book, is what they use as a source to help you understand employment-related provisions of the program. So you can look at this and find out exactly all the rules about working and getting your benefits at the same time. So there's a link there for you. And when you receive these slides later on today, all of these links should be clickable and they should all work, but things change quickly when it comes to these things. So if you find a link that doesn't work anymore, or it doesn't go to the right place, please just let me know, or let anyone on the team know, and we can get those fixed for next time. So apologies in advance if something doesn't work. Okay, so let's talk about child support and how that affects your benefits. If child support is a thing in your life, you need to know that, first of all, with a disabled child, they might be able to get child support beyond age 18. It's quite common. You can ask for this during the divorce proceedings and get this set up in advance. You would, ask for payment, child support to continue beyond age 18. If it does, you need that child support to be redirected to a first-party special needs trust. And there are several reasons, but this is what you need to know. Child support beyond age 18 should go to a first-party special needs trust. If you have that done in your initial court proceedings, it's much easier than going back. But if you need to go back later and have it changed, you can do that. Just contact your divorce attorney and let them know that you need that done. And if both parents agree, it should be relatively easy and quick, and the judge would sign off on that right away. It's not a very complicated thing. The reason it needs to go to a first party special needs trust is because this money is your child's money when they turn 18. So we've had the question, what happens if there's back child support payments from when my child was not yet 18? What about those payments? And if anybody has an answer to that from experience, you can go ahead and put that in the chat box, because I didn't know how to answer that question, because it's such a nuanced question. So if you know about that, let me know. But anyway, there is a Medicaid drawback or reimbursement on a first party trust, but that's just the way that it has to be done for child support payments, because those are your kids' money. Okay, so if you have questions about that, let me know. I do see a question in the chat box. My son gets SSDI on my record. It is so much more money than SSI, but it does not come with Medicaid. You eventually get Medicare. Yes, after you're on SSDI for 2 years, you'll get Medicare. We want the waivers that come with Medicaid. What should we do? So what you want to do is make sure that your child is eligible for Medicaid, whether they're getting it or not. And then when they get the waiver, they will get Medicaid. So as long as they're eligible for Medicaid, they should be able to get the waivers. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Okay, that RSDI benefit, which is sometimes called SSDI, it stands for Retirement, Survivor, and Disability Insurance. This is for people who are over age 18. They have a disability that began before they were age 22, and they're the dependent of a parent who has worked and who has enough Social Security credits to be considered insured under Social Security. If your dependent is married, they are not going to qualify. This, again, makes me very unhappy, because it's almost like they're discouraging anyone with a disability from getting married. You know, the SSI benefits are lower. They can't get RSDI or SSDI if they get married. To me, that doesn't seem fair, but again, they did not ask me when they were coming up with these rules. So you can't be married, and you cannot have previously performed work where you're earning more than $14.70 a month. Let's talk about drawing from a parent's record. So when that parent has been working and they've got their Social Security benefits, that parent either becomes disabled, turns on their Social Security benefits, or passes away. The child, the adult child with a disability, is going to be able to draw from that parent's record. The amount is half of whatever the parent's benefit is. So, for example, if the parent's benefit is $4,000, the child will be able to get $2,000, and that does not take away from what the parent gets. So the parent will still get their $4,000, and the child will get their $2,000 for the rest of their life. Now, when that parent passes away, the amount that the child gets goes up to 75%. Now, you cannot get this benefit, which is called the Disabled Adult Child Benefit. It's also called Child Disability Benefits. It's also called SSDI or RSDI. I know it's confusing, but you get this benefit when the parent retires on and goes on their Social Security benefits, passes away, or becomes disabled. After you're on these benefits for 2 years, you automatically get Medicare. So your child should be dual eligible for Medicaid and Medicare, as long as you're following the rules of asset limits and income for Medicaid. You can still get both. So they still have their limits. And it's kind of weird because, you know, some of the rules for like the waiver programs, there's a rule that you can't make more than 300% of what the SSI benefit is, which is that $914 a month. So that means if you want to stay eligible for the waivers, your child cannot make more than $27.42 a month. But then there's the other limits. It's confusing. We can help you unravel all of that if you have questions. You cannot get both SSI and SSDI at the same time. You can get both Medicaid and Medicare. Again, if you're on SSDI or RSDI or the disabled adult child benefits, if you're on that for 2 years, you'll get Medicare. If you're eligible for Medicaid and you either apply for it or you get a waiver, you should be able to also get Medicaid, and you'll be dual eligible. highpointvillage.org has helpful information on their website as well under the Medicaid waivers tab. So Natalie put some information for us in the chat box. You can read more to get that question answered. Thank you, Natalie. What you need to do is file that application, be medically disabled, be fully insured, either yourself or under your parents' record. And then if they're working, then you have to make less than that substantial gainful amount, which was the $1,470 a month. And again, we will send you these slides so you can go through them again and listen again and make sure you get all this information. So how, if your child is restricted from holding assets and restricted from making a certain amount of money per month, how do you protect your child's benefits if they get more than that, more money than that? What you need to do is make sure that you have your benefits, your child's assets in the correct places. We like to call it buckets. Make sure your money is in the right buckets. Make sure that your child is not set up as a beneficiary on any life insurance or investment accounts or bank accounts. And this includes other family members like grandma and grandpa. Maybe they want to leave some money to your child. You want to make sure that they understand that that money has to go to a special needs trust, not directly to your child, or else it will cause their benefits to be affected. And that's what we say, like, is your money in the right places? How do you make sure? So you can establish a special needs trust for large amounts of money. That's what the special needs trust is really good for. You can also make sure that your current life insurance and other investments go to that special needs trust to fund that bucket of money, if you will. And you can have an ABLE account for your child. We're going to talk more about ABLE accounts, but that's another bucket where you can have money saving up for your child, and it will not affect their benefits under the SSI or Medicaid programs. So let's take a few moments to talk about ABLE accounts right now. We're going to switch over to that focus. So when we're talking about ABLE accounts, the beneficiary is the account owner, and everyone is allowed to own only one ABLE account. So your child can have their ABLE account. They're the beneficiary and the owner of the account. Anyone can put money in there. So you can have grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles, and you can even set it up to where friends, anyone can put money into the ABLE account for your child. Now, there are limits on how much you can put in, and that's something that you need to consider. There are special contribution limits and limits on what you can use the money for. So the income that you earn in the account is not taxable. You put money in, it gets invested, and it earns interest, and that interest is not taxable. Unfortunately, your contributions to the ABLE account are not tax deductible like they would be for some other certain kinds of accounts. Some states offer income tax deductions for money that you put into an ABLE account. But since we are based in Texas and most of our clients are in Texas, there is not income tax in Texas. So you cannot get an income tax deduction for money you put into an ABLE account. But like I said, this is a place where you can put money that will not jeopardize SSI or Medicaid. Let's talk about those limits. First of all, for the ABLE account, your disability has to have started before age 26. You do need to be able to prove that. I don't know that they ask you for proof when you sign up for your account. They will ask you, does your child have a disability? What is the disability? What age did it begin? You can put $17,000 into an ABLE account for the year 2023. So you have to watch, there are limits for each year. And that limit is the same as whatever the gift tax annual exclusion amount is. So if you don't know, is it 17? Just look up gift tax exclusion, whatever it is for that year is the same as the limit for your ABLE account for that year. Now, even though you can put $17,000 in, so you'll be able to put in a certain amount every year, you should never let that amount in your ABLE account go above $100,000, or you can disqualify for the benefits. They'll say, oh, you've got over $100,000 in your ABLE account. That should be plenty. You don't need our help anymore, which is crazy. If your child is working, they can put additional money up to $13,590 additional dollars into that account. Again, do not ever let it go above $100,000. Distributions have to be for a qualified disability expense. Your distributions are not taxable. You don't have to pay taxes when you take out that money, as long as it is for something for your child that is a qualified expense. And what is a qualified expense according to the ABLE account? Well, this is pretty cool, because according to them, a qualified expense is really anything that will help achieve a better life experience for your child. So that could be school, it could be tutoring, it could be therapies, it could be medications, it could be adaptive aids or computers or a car or a vacation or clothing. Really, it could be pretty much anything for your child. Now, another thing that is very important to know about an ABLE account is that once the owner, the disabled individual who owns this account, once they pass away, Medicaid can come back and claim reimbursement from your ABLE account. They can say, you know, we've been paying you Medicaid benefits for all this time. We see that you have some money left over there sitting in your ABLE account. We're going to go ahead and claim some of that money as reimbursement. So my advice would be that you spend that money wisely, spend it down. Don't keep a whole lot of extra money in there if possible, that Medicaid can come back and get. Like I said, the ABLE account can pretty much pay for anything that makes a better life for your children. And there is no deduction in SSI because of what you use your ABLE account for. You can use it for financial management services, transportation, education, like I said, pretty much anything. But the caveat with the ABLE account, you can use it for pretty much anything, but you have to limit how much you have in there, and Medicaid can get reimbursed for part of that money. So there's pros and cons. Now, when it comes to the special needs trust, there are also pros and cons. The special needs trust can pay for a lot of different things. It's a great program, but you should not use your special needs trust to pay for normal everyday living expenses like rent or mortgage payments. Your special needs trust should not be used for utilities like gas, electric, or water, or sewage. You should not use your special needs trust to pay for homeowners insurance or condo fees that include utilities or whatever. You cannot use your special needs for cash or food. If you do that, SSI benefits will be reduced by 1/3. So if you're using your trust to pay for housing, rather than using SSI to pay for housing, they're going to say, oh, you don't need all this money. You've got that trust paying for these things. So the thing about the trust is that it can't pay for everything, but there is no limit on how much money you put into your trust. And as long as it's a third-party special needs trust, Medicaid cannot reclaim money from it. So you see that there are pros and cons of the ABLE account and of the special needs trust. And that's why they work really well together. You have both, because one can pay for housing, one should not pay for housing. One has limits on how much money, one does not have limits on how much money you can put in. One has that Medicaid reimbursement clause and one does not. So you want to use them together, understand the rules of each, and use it wisely. Another thing that we hear a lot about, and we talk to families a lot about, is what's going to happen when I can no longer take care of my child? So our answer to that is, first of all, plan early. While you're still young and of sound mind, get all these things organized and in place and ready to go for when the time comes that you are no longer able to take care of your child. Developing that future care plan now is going to be super beneficial for the future. Consider post-educational options, transitional programs, vocational options, all of that. Consider that early, because the earlier that you plan for these things, the better off you'll be. You'll make sure that you avoid wait lists, or that you're on the wait list early enough to have an impact. And you know that when it comes to planning, the earlier that you plan, the more time you have to make an impact on the future. And when it comes to things like life insurance, the earlier you are, the healthier you are, and younger you are, that makes your life insurance less expensive. So all of those things are important. When it comes to thinking about transition programs, partial care communities, full care residential communities, waiting lists can be long, and not all communities accept all individuals. You know, they might have specific rules about toileting or about behavioral issues. So you want to know which programs will be a good fit for your child, and think about that ahead of time. How can they be paid for? Can you use the waiver programs to pay for that residential option? So think about those things and think long and hard before you just say, oh, his brother or sister is going to take care of him. That can have long-term ramifications on both siblings that might be unpleasant. I have a question in the chat that says, what can you use the money in the special needs trust for? And there is a slide that says that. Let me go back to that one. You can use the special needs trust for all of these things, many, many, many things: cosmetics, gas for your car, toiletries, groceries, whatever. Not groceries, I'm sorry, paper products, cleaning supplies, cable TV. Just don't use it for rent, gas, food, cash. You'll get these slides and you'll be able to review them to make sure you're on the right track. Okay, other things to keep on your radar when it comes to planning for the future. That comprehensive special needs care plan, that goes along with the future care cost estimates. How much does a residential community cost if your child needs care for the rest of their lives? How much is that going to cost, 20 years from now? And And in 20 years, when your child needs that, how long are they going to live there? We can help you figure those things out. Make sure that you're on the waiver interest list. Those programs, the Texas waivers like CLASS and Texas Home Living, HCS, Community First Choice, all of those programs are fantastic. And they can be worth a lot of money, but their waiting lists can be up to 17 years long. So make sure that you're on that list. SSDI and SSI, understanding the difference. And we have an entire webinar devoted just to helping you understand those things. ABLE accounts. We've talked about beneficiary designations and making sure that your child is not listed outright as a beneficiary. Most people say, oh yeah, my life insurance, that's easy. First, it'll go to my spouse if they're still alive. If they're not still alive, then it will be divided equally between my kids. That's what most people do. But in the case of a special needs child, that will have harmful ramifications. So make sure you get that right. Your special needs trust, we can help you find how to fund that and make sure again that child support goes to a first party special needs trust. The residential living communities we've discussed. Guardianship. If guardianship is in the future for your child, you can start that process when you're within about 6 months of your child turning 18. And Consolidated Planning Group can help advise you about how that works and what you might need, but you do need to speak with an attorney to get that guardianship set up. There's also alternatives like partial guardianship or supported decision-making or just getting power of attorneys. All of those things an attorney can help you set up. And we can refer you to a great attorney in your area who focuses on these things. And those post-high school education options, we have a lot of webinars about those as well. I'm going to send you this link to our website where we have listed out all of our upcoming webinars. You can find them all on our website, which is consolidatedplanninggroup.com. Consolidatedplanninggroup.com. On our website, not only can you check out all of our upcoming webinars, but you can make an appointment for yourself to have a free initial consultation. This is our team at Consolidated Planning Group. We are 2 husband and wife teams. So you see Allison and her husband, Jeff, and then there's myself and my husband, Andy. And we have a great support team who helps with marketing and paperwork and scheduling and things like that. And how do you get your free consultation with us? Here you go. You can use the QR code. You can call or email us. I want you to know that because you registered for this webinar, we have your contact info and we will be reaching out. We're very kind and very polite. I promise you don't need to hang up on us. And all we're doing is calling to see, first of all, do you have any more additional questions for us based on the information you heard today? Can we answer those questions for you? And do you want to schedule your free consultation? During this consultation, you'll meet with me or Andy or Allison. We're going to talk to you and make sure that your questions are answered. We're going to get to know a little bit about you and your family. And then we'll tell you a little bit about us as a company, the planning packages that we offer and what we charge and how we work, and see if you're interested in moving forward with us or if we think it would be a good idea to move forward with you as a client. And if not, there's no pressure, no obligation, but we do reach out to everybody. So please expect our call. You can also follow us. These links will be clickable for our YouTube channel. That's where all of these webinars are placed. After we host the webinar, we load them to our YouTube channel. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook, and our podcast is here in case you would prefer to listen to us instead of watching the webinars. And when you go to our podcast and you follow along, if you ever want the slides, Or like I said, if you're listening on the podcast right now and you want a copy of these slides, you can simply email contact@cpgcares.net to get a copy of those slides. So I'm going to leave this slide up so you can use it to get our contact information or to schedule your consultation. I have just a couple more minutes. If there are any further questions, I'll take those now. Otherwise, I just want to again thank Natalie for hosting us and for helping with those questions. And thank you all for coming today and taking the hour to be with us. We love helping out. So yeah, I don't see any other questions popping up for me. So I guess I'll just say goodbye and thank you
so much. No, thank you again for partnering with us. This is so great.
Yeah, please reach out. And like I said, expect to hear from us. And hey, it's Friday, so enjoy your weekend. Have a great weekend. We'll be out checking out some breweries. I hope you have fun planned as well. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.